I'm Thomas. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a senior at DU. I'm on Scholars Board. Love PLP dearly, and I'll talk to you a little bit tonight about leadership. Yeah, right. Who knew? Who knew we were in a leadership program and we're talking about leadership? It's crazy. But guys, leadership is a process of innovation. And should we fail in that endeavor, we condemn ourselves to the status quo, and we're going to see all the movements, all the great ideas we have sort of just collect dust, and they're never going to see the light of day. They're never going to see what real, sincere action is capable of doing. But that's dark, that's dreary. We don't want to hear about that. We're PLP, right? We're a room full of, inspired individuals, innovators, trailblazers, entrepreneurs. We get up every day and we go out in our community and we lead by serving and we create sustainable community change. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, with that said, we can always learn more about innovation and what it really means to be a leader. And our guest tonight knows a thing or two about what it takes to be a leader. Now, that's not just from his bevy of different college degrees from institutions around the nation, such as Harvard or Michigan. That's not just the fact that he's dedicated to developing leaders here in Colorado and beyond. This man does not shy away from a culture of innovation. In 2002, he saw a need for a change, and he went out and sought to provide that change. I could stand up here a while and give you the basic bare-bone details on, what that means. I can talk about how he founded the First Western Trust, how he served as chairman and CEO of numerous other organizations. I could talk about how he remains involved in the Boys and Girls Club. I could talk about how he even has an artistic side with his dedication to the Central City Opera House Association. But for crying out loud, why are we going to sit here and listen to me ramble on about these things when we have so much we can learn from the innovator and the pioneer who's off directly to my left? And so without further ado, please welcome Scott Wylie.
I'm really honored to be here with you guys tonight. I've spoken to this program before, and we've hired people in the First Western from this program, and so I'm a huge fan of DU. I'm a huge fan of this program, and really appreciate being invited tonight to speak to you. I thought I'd talk for 20 minutes or so and tell you a little bit about some of the things I've learned about leadership over the years, and hopefully in a way that's helpful to you guys, and then just we'll have questions. And so if you could start thinking of questions now so that we don't have no questions, that would be great. I also should say that when I arrived tonight, I was informed that you all had been instructed to wear business casual, and so if I'm responsible for that, I apologize in advance. I wouldn't have chosen that for you, and I certainly wouldn't have chosen it for myself at your age. So they look great. Yes, they do. All right, so let's get started here. So I started with a slide that says my leadership journey so far because, every day I'm learning and trying to do the right thing with the opportunities I've been given. So first thing I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about my company. So a word from our sponsor. This is a bank I started, as Thomas said, in 2002. This is my fourth bank. I'll tell you about the other three. It's based here in Denver. We're a niche bank. We're a commercial bank, but we just focus on high net worth people. We have locations where all those stars are. So up and down the Front Range, Aspen, Jackson Hole, Laramie, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and Los Angeles. We opened the doors in 2004. Today, down there at the bottom, you can see we're a $1 billion bank and we're a $5 billion money manager. So it's grown to be a significant institution. And I hope to take it public next year, which is going to be really exciting, and hopefully create more opportunities for more good DU people. So then I thought I would also talk to you about my own leadership journey, and I put this into 7 lessons. I don't know if these are going to be helpful for you, but if I go back to when I was in high school, my career counselors at my public high school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, said you should do what you love. And I was an avid musician, among other things. I'm a brass player. I play piano a little bit, and I thought, well, if you're supposed to do what you love, maybe I should look at going to music school. And so I thought, I'll try and see if I could go to a really good music school. Maybe that's something I would do in college. And so my rule number 2 is dare to be outstanding, which you guys have done by coming here to DU. But in my case, there are kind of 4, or there were at the time 4 outstanding schools for brass players. One was at Northwestern, which was considered to be the best because that's where all the brass players from the Chicago Symphony taught. Eastman School of Music in Rochester is really well regarded. Juilliard in New York's a great school, and Curtis in Philadelphia is really good. So I applied at those 4, was admitted to 3 of them. Curtis didn't take a trombone player my year, and Northwestern gave me a full ride, so I went to Northwestern on a music scholarship. I also put there on the bottom, I think later in my career, I ended up switching out of music and going to liberal arts program, and I understand a lot of you are liberal arts majors. So if you're worried about the career prospects for liberal arts majors and you think that I've had a good career, then know that that's out there for you guys. It's just doing what you want to do here, and doing what you love and dare to be outstanding at it. I actually graduated from University of Michigan with a political science and economics degree. Then I went to the School of International Service at American University and got a master's degree in development economics. And then I went to Harvard Business School later, after I worked a couple of years. I'll tell you more about that. My third leadership lesson is that I think it's okay to try and change the world. I would tell you, when I was in college, that became very important to me. I had a very influential, to me, economics professor, if you can imagine that. How many of you have taken economics yet? I mean, this guy was really exciting. So if you haven't had exciting economics yet, stick with it. But this guy was like a world expert in development economics and how economies create jobs and opportunity for their people, and that really got me excited. And so I decided I was going to, as a career, work in public service and work in development economics in the third world, particularly Africa was where I was interested at the time. I did a master's degree on that. And then when I graduated, they had this thing called the Presidential Management Internship. Today it's called Presidential Management Fellows. And if you were a graduating grad school kid, you could apply for this, and they selected a few kids from across the country. And so this is to tell you how old I am. So I worked in the White House of Ronald Reagan as a Presidential Management Fellow. And actually my job was in International Trade Administration. And I worked on a program called the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which was fantastic. And for those of you that are considering public service, I'll tell you, I was 23 years old as the number 2 person in an interagency office that ran this program across the government that the White House was supporting. And we had, the State Department and USAID and the Defense Department and the Commerce Department, the Ag Department, and they were all doing what I told them because I was this deputy director of this program. I'm 23 years old at the time. So, there's a lot of opportunity in government for people that can get stuff done. And I wouldn't rule that out as you think about careers. That lasted 3 years for me. I was flying with Fred Brooks, who was the chairman of McGregor Sporting Goods at the time, to Haiti to see their baseball factory. And he says, Scott, what are you doing working in the government? You should go to Harvard Business School, get a degree, and do something with your life. And so he actually said that. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I ended up leaving government at that time. Number 4 is it's okay to be different. And I put some of the funny things on here. They're probably not funny to you guys, but they were to me. When I graduated from Harvard Business School, basically everybody wanted to work on Wall Street. And so, there were like 4 big bulge bracket firms, of which First Boston was one of them, that you wanted to work at. And so I applied to First Boston. I got a summer internship there. Summer internships, guys, great thing to do. It's a way to get in and understand the companies better, understand industries better. And in my case, I did some things for them that were really helpful to them. And so they actually paid for my second year of school and gave me a job when I graduated. And they said, you can come back to First Boston, do anything you want. I said, well, I want to start a bank in the Caribbean. They said, well, okay, go to Puerto Rico, start a bank for us. That actually happened. And so when I was 29 years old, straight out of Harvard Business School, I had never been to Puerto Rico, didn't speak a word of Spanish, and never worked in a bank. I started my own bank, for First Boston in San Juan. That actually happened. And then they decided they didn't want to own it. So my boss, who's the chief financial officer of First Boston, he's a big-time New York guy, he calls me up and he says, Scott, you got to liquidate the bank right now. And I said, why is that? I just started. You'll leave me alone. He said, well, I can't tell you why. You just have to do it. So, well, would you sell it to me? He goes, yeah, sure, we'll sell it to you. Just bring me a check for $5.9 million. So I'm 9 months out of business school. I don't have any money, right? So I'm like, okay, John, I'll bring you a check, 2 weeks. So I ended up buying the bank. The way I did it, in Puerto Rico at the time, there are like 12 families that have all the money. And 3 of them already had a bank. There were 3 banks, and 3, owned by these 3 families. And then I figured the other 9 probably had like bank envy. So I went to them and I said, hey, you want to be, 1/10 of owners of this bank? Thinking I'm going to be the 10th, and I'm not putting in any money. And so that's how we bought it. And it took more than 2 weeks, though. It took like 4 weeks, but that's what happened there. That was my first bank deal. Then the Museo del Niño, I put that there. I moved from Boston to San Juan, and Boston had this incredible children's museum, and I had 2 little kids when I was at Harvard. And so we'd spend a lot of time at the Children's Museum. And you go to San Juan at the time, the education program was a mess, and I wanted to do something to have an impact on the education program. But it's a big government mess, and I didn't want to get involved in that. So I started this children's museum. There's a woman that I met that was a Harvard PhD, a Puerto Rican, that wanted to be the executive director. And I said, if you'll do that job, I'll raise the money for it. And that's, 27 years old now, and served thousands of kids a year for 27 years in San Juan. Thomas mentioned my involvement in Central City Opera. I've actually been involved in lots of performance arts groups. And that's been a big part of my career. I am a big fan of Central City Opera, and there's a lot of DU connections to that. For those of you that know that story, it's a great story. You can ask me about it if you want to hear about it. Lesson 5 is don't settle for either people that you don't like or settle on your passion. After Puerto Rico, I did 2 more banks. The first one was here in Denver. I bought a 2-bank bank holding company. Most people here know it as the Women's Bank. The actual holding company was called Equitable Bankshares. That was another deal where I didn't have any money and bought it. Well, the story on that, just quickly, you can ask me about it if you want to hear more, but I bid, there was an auction, and I bid $17.5 million. And I didn't have that money. But you can't tell anybody that, right? They have to think you have it. So yeah, I totally have it. So the money I had was tied up in this bank in Puerto Rico, which is still, independent, and I'm still on the board there at the time. So I bid $17.5 million. I borrowed 10. I'm now 34 years old. I borrowed $10 million, right? And then I raised 7 from friends, and we ended up buying it. And then, and then we went public 2 years later with a $100 million valuation, so that turned out okay. But anyways, I think I'm doing something when I step on this. So anyway, I don't know. It kind of came back on last time. It's all right, I got to back up. So I guess for me, this slide was about don't settle on people and passion. So I bought this bank here, 2-bank bank holding company, and started with that. And we had some really great people involved in that. But I ultimately had some disagreements with one of my partners, and ended up either offering to either buy them out or have them buy me out. I ended up getting bought out of that, and I started my own private bank and trust company. That was my third deal. And then I sold that 2 years later to, do we figure it out? To Northern Trust, and then I ran Northern Trust in the Rocky Mountain region here for 4 years after that. That's okay. That's okay. And then I worked at Northern Trust for 4 years after that, as I mentioned. And there, I mean, this is about not settling, right? I was really kind of embarrassed of the job we were doing for clients. I didn't feel like it was right. And so I started Trust Bank, First Western Trust, as my fourth deal, which we already talked about that one. I left in 2002 and opened that in 2004. And my whole idea of that was I thought there was an opportunity to create a Western-based private bank and trust company like the big Eastern ones, because I think the West is different. And so that's why I called it First Western, and as you see, we've grown pretty significantly around the West. Lesson 6, which I have a really great slide about that, is to have a plan and get great people to help you. And you know, in business, I've now told you about my big 4 deals. I've actually done some other deals. I had a software company that I bought and sold to Intuit. But you know, I think it's a lot about people and who you get involved with. And then I put on this slide also as a nonprofit community thing. I've also been very active now for almost 30 years in the Young Presidents Organization. And Young Presidents Organization is a organization for young CEOs that are of certain size companies. And it's a worldwide organization that's all about learning. And the reason I mention that is, you know, you can get involved in things that help the community. You can get involved in things that help education. We talked about that. Or you can get involved with things that help and grow you so you can do more things. So I think having a plan, get great people to help is really important. And then my last step on my leadership journey is to aim high. And I put a picture of our building there because I'm really proud of it. We have the Union Station downtown. If you look at the biggest building down there, it's First Western Building. And I think that's so cool. And then you know, just thinking about how we've done for my partners and you know, in business, a lot of you guys aren't in business, I understand, but in business, that's a big thing, is how you do for your shareholders. And I have a lot of partners in First Western. I've got 250 investors that are partners with me in that. And it's pretty interesting. If you look over the last 15 years now, since 2002, or 13 years since we opened the doors at First Western, it's been a pretty tough time in financial services. You know, if you look, last 10 years for the S&P 500 is more than doubled. The financial index, S&P Financial Index, is up about 12% over that same 10 years, right? So financials have been very difficult over the last 10 years. We have picture here, but not here. So I just put a slide up, which you can see here, shows what you can see it here, which shows you how we've done relative to the publicly held banks in Colorado. Our stock over the last 13 years since I opened First Western has tripled. We're privately held, so that's just in private trades. Whereas the 2 big Colorado publicly held banks, which are Colorado Business Bank and Guarantee Bank. Guarantee Bank's down about 50% over that same 13 years since they went public. Colorado Business Bank's up about 30%, and we've tripled. So we've really outperformed our peers and done well for our shareholders too. My second to last slide shows you a report card. I thought you guys might get a kick out of my little 7 leadership ideas and how I've done on them in the different stories that I told you. And I thought it would be interesting to go through and sort of check the boxes. And I did okay. I was surprised how much those lessons applied to all the different things I've done. And then down at the bottom of that slide, I put a picture, 2 pictures of people that I thought would be interesting stories to end on. The first one is when I was at Harvard, we had a lot of events like this where we'd have really interesting. Well, not like this. It was different in the sense that they were really interesting speakers, but with a lot of events where we had speakers, some of which were really interesting. And one of them was Jim Cook, who started Boston Beer Company, which is Sam Adams. So he was a Harvard Business School grad that went to Boston Consulting Group, was a big consulting group, quit to start Boston Beer Company, and like 2 years before he spoke to our group at Harvard, he had started Sam Adams, right? So a Boston Beer Company. So he came and told us a story. And so we'd hear a lot of these entrepreneurs telling stories about, you know, how smart they are and stuff like that. And it always sounded really great. But the thing I liked about Jim Cook is he said, you know, he told us a story of the Boston Beer Company. It was a great story, you know, the strategy and the market positioning and how he, you know, was brewing the beer in rented breweries and how he was selling it by driving around in his car and talking to bartenders and stuff. But at the end of his speech, he said, you know, what people don't talk about in entrepreneurship is how difficult it is. And the cost for me, you know, it cost me my marriage, it cost me my family, it's cost me a lot of money, and it's a really difficult process. And so I think... Good job, yeah, that's it. Okay, so now we're going to do it all again. Yeah, you want to see my sweet building? There it is. People, when they come visit me sometime, they're like, I couldn't find your building. That's not true. It's the biggest building. There's my... So here's my two people. That's Jim Cook I was just telling you about. Who knows who that guy is? Yeah, what's he think about leadership? He's a very effective leader, but he's a little violent. He is a Viking. So he's like the main character of this History Channel show, which is not a history story. It's more like Game of Thrones than history. But he's the king of Norway or whatever, of the Vikings. And it's really interesting. He kind of says the same thing. Thank you. I think I have it. Okay. He says the same thing like Jim Cook said, which is that leadership is really a big burden. And it is a burden to him that ultimately kills him in the show. We're all going to die, okay? Not as violently as him, hopefully. But anyway, I think it is a good reminder to people that want to be entrepreneurs to understand that there's a lot of great stuff to it. You can do a lot of good for a lot of people, and there's some hard parts about it too. So I thought that would be good for you to hear that. The last thing, this is my last slide, is I wanted to tell you guys, this is another sales pitch, that at First Western we run a professional development program. We have 1 or 2 DU people in it every year. And these guys go on to be leaders in our company. A number of our bank presidents are PDP alumni. It's a 1-year program. We'll put you in whatever track you want, lending, investments, marketing, other stuff. We rotate you around the company. We give you an executive mentor and a peer mentor. The PDPs hang around together. We have 10 years of them, and so all the alums support each other. There's special training and development programs we do for them. If you have any interest in that, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call, and we'd love to get you the information on that. That's when you graduate. We don't do really internships in the summer programs, but this is something if you're interested in financial services when you graduate, we'd love to talk to you, have the chance to talk to you about it. So that's it. Any questions? Oh, you want to see my report card? Yeah, there it is. So those are each of the stories I told you, and those are how they showed the leadership qualities that I said. And I thought I got a lot of X's. I thought I did pretty well. You thought grown-ups didn't grade themselves. Yes?
Got a vision and plan check for next steps. What is it?
So I mentioned that we want to go public. It's really interesting in financial services today. The banks that get the best multiples. And you know, in business, at the end, it's about making money, right? So I mean, that's a difference between nonprofit world where you focus on mission, and business where, you know, it's doing good in the community and great place to work and doing a good job for your clients and making money, right? That's ultimately what drives business. But, you know, we need to be about 10 times bigger than we are. We're a $1 billion bank today. The sweet spot in banking today is about 10 billion. So, you know, we have a strategy how over the next 5 years we're going to be 10 times bigger. And so, you know, I tell people that, and they look at me like I'm stupid, and we'll do it. I have no doubt we'll do it. Yeah. Yes, go ahead. So, I don't know. She asked how the Children's Museum is after this latest hurricane. So I have friends still in Puerto Rico, and the night of Maria, I emailed several of them, and I didn't hear anything back for like 9 or 10 days. So they have a giant mess there. And so I don't specifically know how the Children's Museum is doing. It's in Old San Juan, which is relatively well protected, and you know, it's in a 500-year-old building, actually, which is made out of stone. So I mean, it'll be fine at some level, but they got, you know, giant, only half the island has potable water today. Only 10% of the island has electricity. It's a real mess there. And my friends, one of my closest friends runs the largest food distributor in the Caribbean. So you could imagine how impacted that they have been by this. And he said it's like nothing he's ever seen. And they have hurricanes there every 3 or 4 years. So it's a real disaster. I'm actually hopeful, and people make fun of me because I'm a very optimistic person, but I think Puerto Rico had some real very, very difficult economic problems that I didn't know how they were going to solve. And I hope that this turns into some kind of giant Marshall Plan thing where the U.S. says, you know, we have some responsibility here and we can help rebuild Puerto Rico to be a much more sustainable place than what it was. So you know, you never know. Hopefully good comes out of it. Is clicking good or bad? Yes. Because I was invited. I said the same thing to myself, right? There are a lot of amazing people in Denver that do amazing things, and I am but one of many people that make all this work. And I said at the beginning, I really am flattered to be invited here and humbled to be speaking here. I'll tell you the reason I said yes without hesitation is I'm a big fan of the University of Denver. My dad was a hockey player here from 1951 to 1955. I told you this story about the Women's Bank. The chairman of the Women's Bank was Joy Burns. Does anybody know who Joy Burns is? My mom was a Pi-Phi here, and thank goodness both my parents came to DU, or else I would not be here. Do the math on that one, right? So I'm a big fan and supporter of DU. I think this is a great resource for the community. Yes. Sorry. Thank you for explaining the question. She's nodding. That's what I meant. I don't know. I mean, I think that's for you guys to judge. One of the reasons that I did this presentation this way, it's like I think a lot of times speakers come and they say, you know, here's the 7 lessons, and they don't make it personal. And I hope by making it personal for you guys, you see it's just, you know, me and the way I am, the same way it's you the way you are. And the path you guys need to find for yourself and your leadership path is not mine, right? It's being who you are and doing what you love and dare to be out, right? I mean, it's that stuff, I think. And what's worked for me is being myself and getting people to believe in that, good people. That was one of them, wasn't it? I think it was. So, yeah, go ahead. So, I don't know if I should tell you this one. So I told you the Fred Brooks story and on his airplane in Haiti and the baseballs and all that. So I only applied to one place, which was Harvard Business School. And my year, for some reason, they decided they were going to interview people. And so to do like a test for admissions, I think this is working.
Can you hear him all the way back there?
Yeah. I'll set this down. If it doesn't work, then we'll try again. So as a test, they did a test group where they interviewed them, and then they had the rest of the group that they did the old-fashioned way with applications and stuff. And so I was, lucky one to get interviewed. So I had to fly up to Boston and do an interview, which was a little intimidating. But I told them, that this was my only school I wanted to go to, and I think they looked at some of the things that I had done at the time. I didn't tell you the whole story, but like that summer job I had, the Presidential Management Internship Program where I was running the Caribbean Basin Initiative. So Puerto Rico was really worried about what the Caribbean Basin Initiative was going to do to the economy of Puerto Rico, because a lot of people in government don't understand that it's not about cutting up the pie, it's about how big the pie is. And so I think a lot of times people are protecting their slice of the pie instead of thinking about how big the pie could be. And so, First Boston was the investment bank to Puerto Rico, and so Puerto Rico was trying to figure out how to save themselves from getting all their tax benefits cut in the '86 tax legislation, which, they're talking about tax reform today. The last big U.S. tax reform was in 1986. So I'm a summer intern in 1986. First Boston, they say, hey, you got to go to Puerto Rico, and you got to figure out this program of how we can get the government of Puerto Rico to keep from getting the taxes cut in the '86 tax reform. So I went down and I met with the governor, and I met with the head of the Economic Development Agency, and I put together this program that created a $100 million fund to drive economic development, funded by the Puerto Rican government, but for the rest of the Caribbean and Central America. And that turned out to be a big deal at First Boston. They really appreciated that. So that's why they hired me paid for my second year of school and stuff. So again, that's just doing what was natural to me, and because of some of the things I had done. And I'm no different than any of you guys. Trust me, I probably couldn't have gotten into DU when I was 18 years old. So that was really my point, I think, of your really good question. I hope I didn't be too frivolous about it, but I think it is about thinking about who you are and what you want to do, and then doing it. Because even if you promise you're going to pay $17.5 million, if you try hard, you'll find a way. Yeah, go ahead.
What's the most, criticizing feedback you've ever received, and how did that affect you in terms of your first year back?
I don't know. I would tell you there's a lot of haters out there. And people make stuff up, right? So like on the internet, somebody called me a narcissistic buffoon. And they spelled it B-A-F-F-O-N, which isn't even a word. And I'm thinking, I am not a narcissistic buffoon, right? I'm not even a buffoon. But I don't know. I think you just gotta, follow your heart, trust that. For me, I've been married 37 years, and I have a wife that's just incredibly supportive, and I have friends that are unbelievable. Scott Ryman, that endowed this hall, is a great guy, and a big fan of his. Actually, a lot of the buildings around here are endowed by friends of mine that are, you get your community, and you trust your friends, and they trust you. It sucks to be called a narcissistic though. Yes.
So I have a question about your fifth point, especially in regards to the unsettled people.
Yeah.
In a lot of situations, you are working with who you're working with, so you can't exactly use that. So what exactly do you mean by unsettled?
Yeah, so I actually have a story I want to tell you, but I'm afraid this is being recorded. So I'm going to have to tell it in a way that's like not exactly true. But I got into a deal, one of my deals, where I just didn't like one of my partners. And at the time, I was 35 or 40, I don't remember exactly. So pretty young, right? Pretty early in my career. And at that time, I decided that life was too short to deal with people I didn't like. And so I got myself out of that situation, which cost me a lot of money, actually. And I made a decision at that time that I was going to not put myself in a position where I didn't control who I had to deal with. And so like in our bank, if I have a customer that treats our people badly, I'll fire them like nothing. And I mean, fire the customer, not the employee, right? But I don't let people treat our people badly. I don't have clients that treat me wrong, right? I think you can make that choice at some point. And I think it's hard when you're 20, right? Yeah. But you can look for another job, right? And so that's kind of firing your boss. So that's what I mean by that. And I wanted to tell it more truthfully, but he's recording it. Yes.
So for our big project this year, we're supposed to go out and look for stakeholders that are interested in what we're trying to change. And we're not looking for $17 million, but how do you go about and try to find the people that are interested in what you're doing?
Well, I mean, do these guys know Eric Matizek? Would that name mean anything to them?
Some in the second year might know Eric.
I mean, there are kids that were in this program. Or Craig Harrison, is that a name you guys know? I mean, these are two PLP kids that I met when they were in PLP, and they called me up. One of them, I probably shouldn't tell you the name of who it is, brought me this binder. He said, you know, I've got a life plan. These are things I want to accomplish. And right? I mean, you know, there's a DU mafia in Denver like you wouldn't believe, right? There's a lot of people that want to help DU kids. And if you show up prepared and serious and ask for something that people... One of my kids came over last night. They're adult children, of course. He asked me for something really stupid. And I said, so if you were me, would you say yes to that? He said, no. I said, I'm actually willing to do something along the lines of what you're suggesting, but just not that. So go home, think about something I could say yes to, and come back tomorrow. He goes, well, what time are you going to be home? I said, 9 o'clock. So I have that to look forward to tonight. Well, if he gives me a chance to. It'd be a dumb question. I was going to say dumb answer, not something else. Yes.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell us more about the Central City Opera and that story?
Sure. So you guys know who Dan Ritchie is? Yeah. So Dan Ritchie's a really good friend of mine. And when I moved back to Colorado 30 years ago, I came to see Dan, and he knew I am a musician. And so I was saying, you know, Dan, what would be good things to get involved in town? And he was chairman of Central City Opera Board at the time. He's, well, you've got to be on Central City Opera. And so DU has a lot of connection there. Central City Opera, if you guys don't know, is the largest owner of historic properties in the state. It runs the largest summer opera festival in the country. It runs a big training program. It's very tied in with the music school here, and runs phenomenal operas. If you like music at all and you haven't been up to Central City, it's really worth a trip. It's you know, if you don't love opera, just do it once. Just go up there. It's like time travel back into the late 1800s, and there's this beautiful old stone opera house, this little opera house, and they put on great productions. It's really something special. So that's how I got involved in it. I was on the board there for 20, 25 years one time. Yes.
I think it's kind of bouncing off of that. No, you're good. Okay. Bouncing off of that, I want to ask this. Do you still play music / how do you balance your productivity with your passion?
Yeah, that's hard, right? It's about choices. And I always think when people say, well, I don't have time for that, well, that's because you're choosing not to make time, I think. So for me, you have to choose. To be really honest with you, I don't really play music anymore. I love it. My kids play. I'm a big supporter. I'm involved in a lot of musical organizations. I have friends that formed a band about 10 years ago, and they wanted me to be in it, and I didn't feel like I'd make the time for it. And so I've chosen other things, you know. But who was your chancellor before the current one? What was his name? Bob Coombe. You know, I always thought he was great. And he took up cello at age 50 or 55 or something. I was thinking, yeah, that'd be cool. I'd do that. So maybe someday I'll take up cello. I think that would be something cool. Yeah.
So I think your transition from like public service to private sector is really interesting. So is there anything you learned like through public service that kind of helped you in the private sector, like learn any skills that were beneficial?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of already told you my feeling about it, which is I think in the public sector you can get a lot more responsibility younger than you're going to get in the private sector realistically. And so if you have a little bit of that gene, like I asked Thomas before we started, he was telling me he's a history major in public policy. And I said, oh, you're going to do government? He goes, heavens no. So thought that was interesting, right? He wants to be a lawyer, is what he told me. So I actually think government is a great place to make a contribution, and maybe if you have a change the world gene, scratch that a little bit. But I think that for me, working in government, I was just shocked how depressing it was. I mean, there's a lot of beaten down people that can't get anything done. And so making a career out of that for me wasn't going to be the right thing, and I knew that. The other thing, and I hesitate to tell this to strangers, so I hope you guys don't think badly of me for this, but one thing I learned in working in government is a lot of it is about money. You know, who's got the resources to get stuff done? And I thought, you know, for a career, being in the flow of money, which is what a bank is, right, where you allocate capital, gives you a chance to change the world. And I think in our business, I mean, I really do feel like it's a little bit of a higher calling because we help people realize their dreams and you know, fund things that are important to people and help people figure out ways to achieve their dreams. So I think bankers have really been vilified in the last 10 years as, you know, the people that caused the financial meltdown, all that stuff. But for me, the financial industry can be a higher calling, and I feel it is. And so that's really why I chose it, to be really honest with you. I thought that was an area where I could have a big impact. And you know, $1 billion bank in Colorado is not that big, but a lot bigger than $0 bank, which we were 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And, you know, we're going to be 10 billion before long, and, you know, we can have a big impact. Yes. But, I'm sorry. We need to go over here. You know, line of sight's kind of here, so I apologize.
My question is, what has been your biggest personal challenge?
I don't know. I have a lot of them, you know. Raising $17.5 million was tough. I think this question about finding balance is what it comes down to on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you can spend unlimited time at work, right? It just is like that. And I think, and this probably feels far away to you guys, but you know, 10 years from now, you're going to be in a relationship. You're going to be thinking about families, and so you know, you get to be 25, 35 years old, and so you got all this kind of family time you want to spend at a time what's really busy in your career. And then somewhere in there, you got to think about yourself and growing your, you know, going to the gym and taking care of yourself and learning and improving improving as a professional and being knowledgeable about your industry and stuff like that. So it's just always a lot of pressure and finding a balance in all that. I think is the biggest challenge. And you know, there's any decision you make there's cost to, like Jim Cook said, right? You don't pay attention to your family, then your wife's going to say bye. So you don't pay attention to your business, the business goes bankrupt. Good question. How about up there? I haven't been looking that way. Have I missed anybody? All right, let's come back to you. Mr. Line of Sight. Oh, this one back there. We'll come there next. Oh, you go ahead, and then we'll do that.
So it's kind of two parts. Just like
No, one question, and then up there.
So like as because I am kind of individual kind of more specific to like the business industry, like going into it at such a young age, is there like something like any kind of tips that you say like really like trying to go into like a leadership position in that, anything that you really looking back on it now would be something that you would say go for? And then second question is kind of specific, like what was the mind or like your thought process of like investing in like multi-million-dollar things you didn't have?
Well, they're both. Actually, you know, the second question answers the first. Realistically, a 50 or 60-year-old that has a lot of money invested in a company is not going to hire a 20-year-old to run it, right? It's just not going to happen. So if a 20-year-old creates a company and gets a 50 or 60-year-old to invest in it, voila, you're the head of a company. So you know, if you really want to be a leader, you know, if you want to start a bank at age 29, you're probably going to have to be the driver of that. And I mean, I told you a story. I didn't have any money at all. Part of the story I didn't tell you is these guys. Once I got them all organized, and like, well, how much money are you putting in? And I said, none. I don't have any. I just graduated from Harvard Business School, and they said, no, you have to put in some money. I said, okay, but I don't have any money. And they said, no, you had to put in money. And I said, well, where am I going to get money? And they said, you're going to borrow it from a bank. And so they made me go to this bank and borrow $50,000 to put in, which was a lot of money. And I literally borrowed $50,000 to put in with this $5.9 million to get my 10% share of this company. So, I mean, I think that's the first part of your question is if you want to get leadership at an early age, you're probably going to have to take it. You're not going to, nobody's going to say, hey, you know, you look like you don't know anything. Why don't you do this? If you find an entrepreneurial company like mine, I do give leaders, young leaders, a lot of responsibility because I feel, you know, it's worked for me. So, you know, some companies are good at that. Big companies too, I suppose. But what was it? How did you frame the second question exactly? Well, I think that a lot of times in leadership, people really look to the leader, and if the leader believes it, they'll believe it. And so when I was offered the chance to buy this bank for $5.9 million, I'm like, yeah, okay, figure it out. And I told you what I did. And you know, you go and you talk to these people, and you have a lot of confidence because you believe it. And you know, in that case, I think the Harvard Business School pedigree helped a lot. I think that they thought that was a lot more than what it really is. And so, I mean, they supported me. And with the other deals, it's the same kind of thing. You know, I think you have to, it's like my kid, right? You have to ask a question that somebody could reasonably say yes to, and then be willing to be told no a lot. But works out on that. Finally. Yeah. Yeah, so I think being well prepared is really important. You know, one of the things I think that's hard for high achievers like you guys is asking people for help. And so one of the things that works for me is I have really smart people that I know, and when I'm working on a pitch, I'll show it to them and say, hey, what's wrong with this? And I mean, in April, I did a non-deal roadshow with investment bank to go talk to a bunch of institutional investors about the fact that I want to raise 10 times more money to grow the bank. And that was the same thing. I mean, you can imagine the number of times I've raised money, which is a lot. And so I put together this presentation, and then we went and we tried it on to people that you know, think a lot about the way that those institutional investors think, and they gave us a lot of good advice. And actually, we went to our first meeting, and the person at that meeting asked some really good questions. So that night, I'm at the hotel with my CFO, and we're changing the presentation to add the stuff that we learned from that first meeting, right? So I think being well prepared makes a huge difference, because that makes it more believable, right? When you're telling a story, and people see that you know a lot more about it than they ever are going to, it makes it a lot more believable, makes them comfortable investing. You know, use your resources, and you know, he's full of them, right? This is a great school for that. And again, I told you about the DU Mafia. I mean, if you have a finance professor that you want help on a finance project, and you say, who in town is really good on this that has a DU connection, they're going to know. You know, they'll help you find them. Great question.
Sure. So you're obviously smart. But there's another aspect to you that I wonder how much you use in this business. And that is, you got a great sense of humor, and you're an awesome storyteller. Matter of fact, right after this, please start a story with one day at Bandcamp. Yeah. So do you actually use your storytelling in business?
I think so. You know, I don't have another person that, you know, like on my back or anything, you know. I do think, and we talked about this a little before, I mean, I think what's going to make whatever you want to do work for you is you, and not trying to be somebody else. And like, there's a lot of bankers that are super serious people, right? You look at them and say, boy, if I could be just like Jamie Dimon, I'd be, you know, head of JP Morgan. I have no interest in being Jamie Dimon. And I also have no interest in being the head of JP Morgan. I think being authentic is really important, and I try to be. I mean, I do have a serious face. If I'm talking to somebody about managing money for them, I'm probably not telling a lot of jokes, but I am still myself for sure. And I bring along like really serious people. I do tell people, actually, you know, luckily, I'm not going to be managing your money. We have these really smart CFAs that are going to be doing it. I do that. They do laugh, yeah.
My big thing is my leadership style. I'm definitely more of like an empowering type of person, and like generally a nice person. I don't say. I swear to God. But
I don't hear any clicking. Wait a minute, is applause better than clicking? Because they definitely clap for you.
I really don't like being a jerk, but sometimes you have to be, like, just the way things work out. And so I don't know like what's true for you or where your leadership style falls on that, but one, if like, do you like in business mode, do you kind of shut things off and just go like execution mode? I assume not. And if it's not, how do you go about, you know, calling people out when you need to be called out in a way that's really genuine?
Yeah, that's a really great question too, actually. So when the company's really small, the day we opened First Western, there were 10 people or something, right? So you really have to do everything yourself, and you have to be comfortable doing everything yourself. You know, today we have 300 people, and I have deliberately hired people that are what I'm not. So, like, for example, I'm a middle child. And so I absolutely seek the middle ground in everything, right? If there's people that are having a dispute, I won't say one or the other, I'll pick the middle, because that's just my nature. So since I know that I'm going to do that, and that's not the right decision a lot of the time, I have a CFO that's like ridiculously difficult. And so when I know something difficult needs to be communicated, I'll say to her, hey, Julie, these people need to talk to you. Go talk to them. Or like I have this human capital director who it seems really nice on the outside, but she's really mean. And so if I have a personnel problem, I'll say, hey, Tina, can you go talk to those people? I just avoid conflict, right? And I wish I didn't. Like my senior staff, they have me in therapy. They're like, you need to speak up. Okay, I'll try, but I'm not going to do that realistically. So once you get to a certain size, you can sort of get partners that do the stuff you don't want to do or that aren't good at. I mean, nobody's good at everything, right? And so my team, heck, they want me doing what I'm good at, and they want to do what I'm not good at. Like, it makes them really frustrated if I try and do something that I'm not good at. They would much rather do that. So if somebody needs to be chewed out or have their expenses cut or whatever, they're like, yeah, we'll do that, no problem. That answer your question? That's actually true. When I started First Western, really it was with one other guy at the beginning. And he is like that. He's the oldest, he's the elder child. And so he was like a really good compliment to me. I knew that. Yeah.
I know you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm hearing as a leadership position where there are a lot of people working under you, and like you're kind of managing everything that's going on. How do you handle the negative criticism and people constantly, saying exactly what you're doing instead of doing what you're doing other people doing? How do you feel confident in making decisions and that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of things, right? I mean, I told you about the narcissistic buffoon situation, which is difficult, but you try not to think about it. I would tell you, I'm worried about 4 stakeholder groups at First Western, right? And this is true, I think, in any organization, nonprofit company, whatever. But you got to take care of your clients and make sure that they're like super happy. So we work really hard on that, and we survey them for that, and we test our Net Promoter Score, and we make sure that that's off the charts, which is really important. I think in our business, it's all about people. So you got to have great people, and so we talk a lot about that, and I talk about creating a great place to work, and we survey employees quarterly, and we monitor our Net Promoter Score and do things to drive up that Promoter Score so people feel positive. And for every person that thinks I'm a narcissistic buffoon, I get 100 people that tell me what a great company First Western is. And so I think human nature is you focus more on the 1 than the 100, but I do get a lot of positive reinforcement. I was at a board meeting the other day, and one of the board members, who's a very prominent woman in town, she said to me, hey, do you know that my daughter-in-law or stepdaughter, Darcy, works for First Western? And I said, oh no, she told you bad stories about First Western? And she said, no, she loves First Western. She thinks it's the greatest company. So, I mean, you do get a lot of positive. So that's the second group you have to take care of. The third one is the shareholders. If you're not taking care of shareholders, you can't raise capital. If you want to be 10 times bigger, it's never going to happen if you can't raise capital. And then the fourth one is the communities that we operate in. And that's a big thing at First Western. We work really hard to be actively engaged in our communities and have an impact and make a difference. So I think it's about doing those 4 things. And look, people are going to criticize you. You just have to say, I think I'm doing the right thing here. I've got a great team of people doing it. And stick with it. Yes. You come there next.
You can go back to 1983.
I don't know. I don't like having big regrets about things. And I think that. Pardon? I should have taught my kids how to ask better questions. Well, we worked on that last night. feel like, you know, you sort of end up at this point in the journey as a result of all the things that you've done. So I think even the mistakes I've made and the dumb things that I've done. Whose question was it about the people? But yeah. So I mean, I think I wish I would have decided earlier not to deal with difficult people. It seems like too short for that. You know, you get to my age, and I would like to think I'm middle-aged, but maybe I'm older than that. You know, I have friends that are dying, right? And you're like, why would you spend 1 minute thinking about, you know, people that are negative energy? So you really get to focus on. And luckily, I made that decision when I was 40, and not, you know, later. I think a lot of people put up with a lot of crap that you shouldn't. Maybe that would be the one. I wish I would have decided earlier. Yes.
So you've taken a lot of risks that worked out and you're able to pay it off, you know, from buying the thing in the auction. Was there anything that you did that didn't work out as well? And if so, how did you come back from that?
Well, I wouldn't think of it as a gamble. I mean, I believed I could raise the money. And I believed that for some reasons, right? Like I had a plan. Wasn't entirely sure the plan was going to work, but I believed it was going to. I mean, I think that's, I told you before, I think a lot of my executive team thinks I'm ridiculously optimistic, and I think that's part of what entrepreneurs need to be. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a nature thing where you have to believe in yourself. I mean, I think about Eric McKee, I just think about the people we talk about, Craig Harrison. These are people that are really very positive and confident people that they're going to make it happen. And to me, you talk to them and you're like, holy, they're going to make it happen. Right? I wouldn't bet it went against either one of those guys. And I use them as examples from this program. So I think if you believe it and you have a plan and it's well researched and presented and you vetted it with your friends and people that would know, and you know, people want to see you succeed, right? They want to see young people prosper. Get great people to help you.
In your time working at First Western, has it always been the goal of yours to take professional executive, or is that something that's kind of evolved in the past couple of years?
Well, I would actually not choose to be public if all other things being equal. But there are good reasons for us to be public, which are to be 10 times bigger. You know, if you do the math, we've grown organically about 20-25% this year, depending on how you look at it. And if we're, you know, $1 billion in revenue in assets today, and we want to be 10 billion, you know, somebody have a calculator to figure out how many years that is at 20% compound. I think it's a long time, and I don't want to work that long. So it's going to be acquisitions that get you there. And to do acquisitions, you have to have a public currency, because the sellers won't sell and take a minority interest in a private company. So just because of the goals I have and the way we're going to achieve that, it means we have to be public. So that's something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, get ourselves ready to do. And as I say, we did this roadshow earlier this year to see if we did it in 2017 or 2018. We push it to 2018 for reasons that came up on that roadshow. It's something that is, I think, really important for us to achieve our goals. Yeah.
Why did you go into business? Like, how did you know to go from music?
So in music, one of the things about being at the best music school in the country for brass players is I got to see a lot of really great brass players, right? Because I was a freshman my first year, and the seniors are 4 years ahead of you. You can sort of look at them and see if that's where you want to be. And so the career opportunities that those guys had kind of scared me, and I thought maybe this is a better hobby than it is a profession. So I didn't actually go from there to business. I went from there to political science, and then economics, and then development economics, and then change the world, and working in the government, and then business. And to me, the finance piece that I mentioned before was really a critical part of the business part. I wasn't really choosing business. I was choosing finance because I thought, you know, the way that if you can control the money flow, you can control where the change takes place. So that's really how it seems here for me.
So how did you figure out your next destination?
Well, like in Puerto Rico, when I had that bank, I would have stayed there forever. I loved it there. The people there treated me so well. And, you know, I think, I don't know how well any of you know Puerto Rico, but it's a very sophisticated kind of European culture at some level. And it's nothing like the stereotype of the U.S. Puerto Ricans, which the Puerto Ricans call New Ricans, and it's a term of disparagement. But I really liked it. My wife didn't like it at all. And so we got to a point where she said, how long are you planning to stay here? I said, I was thinking it was a little bit indeterminate, and she was saying, I'll give you another year. And so, so in the fall of spring of 93, I had 9 months of my last year left. And so, so I said, you know, what do you want to do? If you don't want to be here, what do you want to do? And she said, you know, go back to Colorado. And so I said, what are we going to do in Colorado? And she said, I don't know, you figure it out. So we moved here for the summer, and I just told my partners in Puerto Rico that I was moving my family to Colorado for the summer, and I would be back and forth. And I explored things you could do here. I mean, the same way like you guys would look for a job, you just get out there and look for it. And I came here and I met all kinds of people, including Dan Ritchie and investment bankers that were in the financial services business. And I found out that this bank was going to get auctioned off, and I bid on it and was the winning bidder. I mean, that's how that happened. You know, just work on it. Yes. Yeah.
So I want to ask you what your strategy for studying and maintaining your elevated standards.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I gotta tell another really personal thing to a bunch of strangers now, and get videotape doing it. We're not strangers. Thank you. Fine, I'll tell you. Every year, at year end, I sit down and spend some time by myself and look at what I accomplished versus last year's goals, and make some new goals for this year. And I make them years in advance. I'll do like a 5-year plan and a 1-year plan. And it's just really to help me set priorities and the things I want to focus on. And I actually don't share it with anybody. I don't really even talk about it, but you know, people do like their New Year's resolutions. I mean, I do a whole thing where I think about, and I think about it in 3 buckets. I think about my professional life, my family life, and my personal life, and things that I want to accomplish. And I think that the process of stopping and taking a look at it makes you think differently about it. I think that if you always are thinking, like in school, you guys are used to thinking in semesters or trimesters or whatever you call it here. But you know, in life, there aren't those things, right? It's just all one big, long show, and so you don't have those natural milestones unless you create them. And so I think that that's a really, it's been very valuable to me. And I've changed stuff I do like big time because of that. You know, I'll look at, like, I didn't tell you this part, but 10 years ago, I was probably on 10 or 15 nonprofit boards around town. And I'm looking at that and saying, you know, how many of these organizations am I really having an impact on? Right? I spend my time on, I spend my energy on, I spend money on it. Am I having an impact? And I'm thinking, you know, like 3. So why am I on the other 12? And so I have presidents in our company now in all our different locations. So I make our presidents get involved in boards, and the way I deal with that in terms of like the guilt of not doing so much is I got them doing it. And if each of them are doing 3 and I got 20 of them, right, that's 60 boards there on having an impact with First Western's influence. And I'm still doing the things I want, which are, you know, I'm 3 or 4 boards at a time. But the difference is, this is one of the slides I didn't get to show you, is I'm on boards, oh, never mind. Well, you know, I was one of the founders of Colorado Succeeds, which is now a national, it's gone to a bunch of states across the country of business leaders impacting public education. You know, I was one of the founders of Be Civic, which is teaching companies how to do effective corporate philanthropy, right? And then they said, well, you have to come on our board. After we started, I said, you have to come on the board. And I said, I'm not going to do that, but I'll put our director of marketing on the board, so she's on the board of Be Civic. So I do stuff like that. Okay.
So you spoke a little bit about passion during your whole story. I feel like that's a term that gets thrown around a lot. Could you maybe talk about what your idea of passion is and maybe how it's developed and changed over the course of?
Yeah, so I think that fits well. Did you hear the question? The question is, how do you know what your passion is? And
how would you define passion and maybe how would yours change?
how you define passion, how's it changed? So, so I guess for me, my passion comes from my interests, right? The things that I've cared about since very early on, and they do change and develop and evolve. I think, like the question that was asked up here about setting priorities, right, making time for things. I think that's listening to your heart and making sure you're focused on things you care about. Tomorrow night I'm going to an event about youth entrepreneurship. I mean, I think that's something that for me has a special passion, which you could see why First Western is very involved in junior achievement, which is teaching kids about business principles. You can't do everything, so I think you got to figure out what it is you care about and focus on that and try and make an impact.
Brianna had her hand up.
Brianna.
My question to you is that because of your leadership style, do you prefer to lead in business teams or to lead
The question is, do I prefer to lead with a team or lead a team? So, I think I'm very much a servant leader type of person where I think it's all about empowering others to succeed. So I would tell you in the Great Recession, we ran First Western a certain way because I believe that you had to be careful. A lot of banks failed in the Great Recession, and so I didn't want that to be our fate. And so I flattened the organization a lot. We ran a very decentralized way, and I gave empowered my 26 direct reports. I mean, I don't know how many 26 direct reports, a ridiculous number. And I thought that was the best way to save money and to get through the recession in the healthiest condition. But once we started growing again, you can't run a company, you can't run a growth company with 26 direct reports. So I narrowed that down. I have 8 direct reports today. And my job today is all about empowering those people. And like I talked about before, they like that, right? They want me to help them succeed, and they want me doing stuff that only I can do, right? There's stuff that a CEO can do that nobody else in the company can really do. I mean, our product group president is never going to get us to be 10 times bigger. That's something I can do. And the more I'm doing their job, the less I can do my job. So it's about empowering people, giving them the tools they need to succeed, supporting them, and then doing the things I need. One more question?
One more.
Okay. It's a lot of pressure.
Go for it. We're a lot.
When you're trying to inspire someone to take on a project or you're starting up a business, took out a loan for several million dollars.
50,000 the first one. 10 million.
What did you say is inspiring people to join that project or to work with you on things that you said people say are incredibly optimistic ideas?
Yeah, well, I think people that invest with me don't think that, right? They believe it. And I think the key to it, we talked about a number of those things, and I would sort of put them all together if I was clever enough in this answer. But, it's about being well prepared, right? It's about having a background that's credible. It's about telling a story that people can say yes to. It's about being confident and sure that you can do it. And of course, just because I seem like I'm sure to an investor that I can do it, doesn't mean I am, right? Doesn't mean I'm not going to wake up at 3 in the morning worrying, but you need to be very confident, and it's not, I mean, I certainly would never portray myself as being overly optimistic. I just shared with you that my executive team is running for that. I think I'm pretty realistic. And, and frankly, I mean, there's some data points to support that. So I think those are the key elements. I think the trick, especially when you're young, is being well prepared and using the resources you have. And I think a lot of times people, especially like at your guys' age, you think it's a sign of weakness. You know, like, I should know how to do this myself. And I think that's a real fallacy. People want to help you. You should ask for help and listen to them, and they'll help you build your story so you can do amazing things. Thank you guys so much. This was really fun.